Masashi Niwano. I am the Festival and Exhibitions Director at CAAM, the Center for Asian American Media. And I am so excited to have here Ian Chang, who is an amazing musician composer based currently in Dallas, Texas. I am in San Francisco, so multiple city conversation. I'm so happy to have you here. This is the end of APA Heritage Month, and this has been a unique one. You know, we're kind of in a really strange time with this pandemic. So I think it's really important for us to remember that we have Asian American communities all around the nation and that we're all connected. So I want to thank you, Ian, for being here.
Thank you, Masashi, and thanks for being here as well. And congrats on CAAMFest for pulling it off amidst, I'm sure, a lot of struggles this year, as you mentioned. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. You know, initially our festival is the largest Asian American film festival. And so to go virtual, it was kind of stressful, but you know, we had overwhelming response. And one of the really exciting things, something that we don't normally get at our fest, is we had many people internationally watching our program. So we'd have questions from our audiences from Brazil, from the Philippines, all around. So
that's amazing.
That was really cool.
Super cool.
So, you know, I think one of the things for Heritage Month that we celebrate is kind of our shared histories as a community, but also all of the amazing kind of culture, all of the heritage that we all either share or that is diverse within our own communities. And you have been making so much amazing music. And I would love to talk to you about that. When did you start making music?
Well, my journey with music began, I guess, the way that many other Chinese kids begin playing music, which was my parents kind of had me take piano lessons when I was 6. And at the time, I think it was more of like a way of giving me discipline in my life and things like that. My siblings all did it as well, but then it kind of stuck with me. And I started playing drums when I was 9 and guitar when I was 14. And it was sort of this obsession that kind of grew, despite not really coming from a musical family or anything like that. And I was in Hong Kong at the time. And then it kind of, in high school, I think about junior year, I decided that I wanted to pursue music, like in college and professionally. And kind of just the obsession just has been ongoing until now. And for most of my professional life as a musician, I've mainly been a drummer in many different contexts around New York City, which is where I spent a lot of time. I lived there for 10 years. It's only recently have I started to kind of make my own music, and that's been a real kind of new horizon for me. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, and I highly recommend. I have recently learned about you, but I've been going on YouTube and just watching a lot of videos of your work, and you are really good. And so I do recommend that people after this check out Ian's work. I mean, you're phenomenal. And so you mentioned growing up, and you have an interesting life. Your family started in Hong Kong, and your family, most of them are still there. Mm-hmm. You moved to the East Coast. Currently, you live in Texas. I guess as a starting point, your parents encouraged you to play piano. Are they still happy that you continue that passion for music, and that is something that you have grown to be so good at?
Yeah, I mean, it was. My parents are super supportive, and I'm very grateful for them. And I think the more that I've learned over the years and to understand the background that they came from, the more appreciative I am of sort of how supportive they've been. There definitely have been some challenges. I think when I sort of decided to pursue music professionally, they were obviously very worried. Just economically speaking, they were worried about me being able to like make ends meet and like have a decent, comfortable life. And so, yeah, even years into me like kind of doing it, and it was very clear to me that was like what I'm doing. My parents would be like, so, when do you think you might like switch gears? And I'm like, oh, it's a little late for that now. But all things considered, you know, they've been very supportive and also very open to learning about what I do. And, you know, they listen to the music I make. And actually some of the music that I just put out an album called Belonging last month, and that was like some stuff that I actually sat down with my parents and listened to some of it, and we had some good conversations about it because some of it actually had some um, point of references from more traditional kind of Chinese influences and stuff like that. So it opened a dialogue between us that we didn't really have before, which was interesting. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, I love when music, film, also music and food, when it can kind of bring together different cultures and different kind of yeah, different backgrounds into something new. That's really exciting. And I do think, I always talk about, as someone who runs a film festival and works with artists, that for aspiring Asian American filmmakers, it's really great to be out there to do it, because I think for a lot of immigrant parents or just parents in general, they want the best for their kids, and they can't imagine my kid wants to be a filmmaker. Like, and there sometimes I know for my parents, they thought, I don't know what that's going to be like. I have no examples of that. So
yeah,
you
no point of reference. Yeah,
exactly. And so you being out there making such great music, although you're kind of working it out with your parents, I think the more this happens, the more other parents see it and go, wow, I wish my kid was a drummer. I wish my kid was as cool as you is. So, in your own ways, I think you're really helping new generations of musicians, just being out there and doing your passion and, kind of living your life to the fullest.
Thank you. Yeah. And I think it's like also super important what it is that you're doing, which is kind of, being a filmmaker yourself, but also being someone who is actively kind of growing the community by presenting new voices of Asian, Asian filmmakers and stuff of a great variety, which is important to the world. I think thank you for doing that important work.
No, you're welcome.
No, I think it's cool.
Yeah. No, and I think, it's interesting. We, CAAMFest, the festival that I run, we cannot exist without talent, right? We can't happen without amazing filmmakers, without musicians who are making great work. I am always inspired. This year I was celebrating my 10th anniversary with CAAM as festival director, and I because of it, I do that thing where I'm going back in time a little bit, looking at throughout the years, and yeah, I mean, I'm excited. We talked before this about the success of films like Parasite. If you go to Netflix right now, the half of it is such a great film. It's a really great time for Asian American filmmakers, for Asian filmmakers. I think the walls are coming down a little bit, and I think people are really interested in kind of seeing new stories out there. But for me as a festival director, that's what's keeping me here. Is there's such great work out there, there's such great musicians like you and others out there who's really doing such good things, and if I can help bring that art, that music, those films to the Bay Area, to the world, through different platforms, I'm really happy with that. And you know every year just connecting with the community and seeing their responses to what I think is really great stuff. It's really gratifying. So yeah,
that's awesome. Yeah.
Um, so you are now making, so kind of your trajectory of sorts. You mentioned when you're in New York, played in bands. You're now making your own music. Like for you, as someone who's making music, like what's important when you're making it? Is it the passion? Is it like your own, letting the world know how skillful you are? Or as you talked about, kind of infusing some of your heritage in there, like for maybe someone who doesn't know your music, like what inspires you to make good music?
For me, the thing that I'm always trying to do is just to make something that feels very honest and is something that, creates something that I would want to hear in the world. And I think for me, I find myself gravitating to music that's a little left of center, kind of like pretty strange, but also familiar in some ways, to kind of tie in like it can still be emotional, but also be, I love the element of surprise in when in any art, really. Like if I'm watching it, like, I mean, Parasite is a good example.
Yeah.
You know, the element of kind of discovery, for myself as a creator is very important, and I hope that's reflected in what I make. But also more recently, kind of digging a little deeper, now that I'm making my own music, like you said, into how my identity relates to the sounds that I'm making, especially when I'm making largely instrumental music. You know, it's a little bit, it's not like you can just like have lyrics say like very clearly like the message that you're trying to say. But I think the thing that I discovered for myself in the past few years is kind of like realizing that, you know, coming from Hong Kong and then moving to the US and kind of having a very split identity in many ways. And I relate to both in some ways, but neither of them like fully kind of describe my experience. I realized that it was something that was frustrating for me for a while, but what I realized was that it's actually something that gives me a lot of freedom to kind of pick my own favorite ingredients, if that makes sense. You know, like I don't have any prescribed path that I'm supposed to follow. So there's a certain point where I kind of abandoned sort of thinking too much about like what I was supposed to be, and just realizing that, like, you know, I am what I am, and kind of naturally gravitating to what I like produces some pretty weird results, and that I just kind of followed those breadcrumbs, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think that's great. And the only connection in my head to, let's say, a Parasite is the director is a master filmmaker. Similar to you, I think you're a really great drummer, and that's the basis. And then once you have that technique, you can take an audience on really different kinds of roller coasters. You may think that you're listening to something and it changes, and I think it's, yeah, the music you make is really great in that way. And I think the fact that you almost feel uninhibited and can play music without kind of these restrictions is really cool. For us, we're at the end of APA Heritage Month, which is a really important time nationally for people to remember the importance of the Asian American community, kind of in times of anti-Asian discrimination, just making sure that we're all kind of, we're proud of who we are, and for non-Asian Americans to still celebrate with us, because there's a lot of mixed histories there.
Totally.
You as a musician, you're doing it year round. You're not just doing it in May, but you are a musician all year long. And I do have a question for aspiring new, maybe young people who want to start in music as well. Maybe they're scared to tell their families that they want to approach the arts. Not maybe not music, but something else maybe in that world. What advice would you give someone who's just starting out on how to kind of build their craft, to be able to be really passionate in a world that may not fully understand, or their goals?
I guess my advice, I think that a very common advice, which is good advice, but I'm going to give like another piece of advice. So the common advice is, and actually the advice I got from my parents, and maybe what kids will be hearing from their parents a lot in this situation, is, okay, if you're going to do this, you got to be the best in your field. Like you got to like beat everyone else, and that was kind of something that was, drilled into my mind at an early age. But I think in some ways it misses the point, especially when it comes to something so subjective as art. And I would like to just encourage everyone to kind of, everyone who might be trying to get into artistic pursuits at a younger age, to also think about, rather than just excellence, also just thinking about like what it is that how it is that they connect with the art form they're trying to pursue, and to kind of just the importance of staying inspired, and the importance of digging deep into the things that really inspire you. And so whether that's like, the range of that can be anything, but I think I would like to encourage people to give themselves their permission to kind of pursue the things that are really speaking to them deeply, and that's how you're going to be able to find your own voice in the long run. And having your own voice is one of the most kind of valuable things in this. Well, I'm sure you would agree, like seeing many films, like reviewing, like it comes across when someone has a perspective, and in many ways perspective can be more interesting than excellence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Yeah, I think all the time of the films that we select or the musicians that we showcase, and we rarely will pick the film that has the highest budget and it's, wow, this is a really beautifully produced film. But
mhm,
for me, it's more a matter of what is the story, why is the filmmaker telling it,
mhm,
like the passion in that. And
mhm.
every year we have films made with less than $50, but it's not a matter
Amazing.
of like all of that. It's a matter of someone really trying and so passionate about getting something out in the world, and we do our best to give them some kind of platform for that. I think we're running out of time. I
I
want
think
to make
so.
sure our other panelists have time for them. But anything else you would want to say to the audience? We are all in different ways quarantined, so music is a great way to escape, to kind of explore. So again, I want people out there to check out Ian Chang's music. It's really great. But
Thank you.
anything you want to say to the audience?
Well, I would also say that another thing to check out while we all have a lot of time in quarantine is the new PBS series that
Oh yeah,
Cam just launched, and it's how much longer is it going to be streaming on PBS?
it's going to be in May and maybe a little bit of June. Yeah,
Yeah, it's a deep dive on the history of Asian American. It's just called Asian Americans.
Asian Americans. We try to
And
make it as simple as
yeah,
possible.
and it's a deep dive into our the history of Asian America, and I think it's a perfect way to round out the month to
Thank you.
by checking that out. So yeah,
Awesome. Well, thank you again. I hope stay safe and healthy. And yeah, we want to thank the audience. Thanks for watching us. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask on social media. And thank you all again. Have a great May and beyond.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.